Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good day to Mr. Azmi and everyone who is currently watching this. So today we are going to present our case study with the title of 1MDB scandal. And these are the list of our group members consisting of undergrad students from BPHP cohort 26 outstations.
Okay, we start with scandal overview. The misappropriation of 42 million ringgit. The SRC International scandal involving former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak is among the high-profile corruption cases globally. These studies explore abuse of power within administrative structures, provenance failures, and the functioning judicial system in adjudicating political figures. Case chronology is between 2011 to 2017. Phase 1 is where the fund flows. SRC established as a 1MDB subsidiary in 2011. Secure 4 billion loan from KWAP with the government guarantees. Funds move through intermediaries Gandingan Menteri dan Ihsan Perdana. Phase 2 is where the exposure begins. Within the 2014 and the 2015 investigations revealed that 42 million transferred to Najib personal account. Media disclosure forced early scrutiny despite government denials of wrongdoing. The legal prosecution is between 2018 and into 2022. On July 2018, the charge had been reviewed. On July 2020 is where the conviction begins, where he need to spend 12 years in prison and he need to pay his 210 million ringgit fine. On December 2021 is where the Court of Appeal upholds High Court verdict. And the last one is on August 2022 is where Federal Court rejects appeal and the real sentence begins. Our core research teams are power and control, where we analyze the abuse of power and conflict of interest, where authority was consolidated for financial decision making. The next one is institutional failure, where we explore witnesses in the internal control by Ministry of Finance and KWAP, highlighting corporate governance deficiency. Next one is money laundering, where mechanism of funds transfer through corporate structures to obscure origins. And last one is rule of law, reinforcing judicial independence and the principle that no one is above the law. Our primary objectives are to analyze SRC chronology, including company establishment and funds flows. The next one is to identify form of abuse of power and mechanism of misappropriation. The next one is to evaluate judicial process from the perspective of integrity and fairness. And last one is to examine implication of government reputation and public perception. There are two theoretical models. The first one is the agency theory, where power of concentration in one prime minister and finance minister increase abuse risk, agents prioritizing personal interest over the principle, the people. Okay, the next one is the good governance model, where benchmarking the failure of accountability, transparency, and rule of law in resource management. The methodology that has been used, first one is from document analysis. This study employs a qualitative approach through analysis of official documents, legal records, and media reports. The next one is primary data, is from Court of Judgment, from High Court, Court of Appeal, and Federal Court. And last one is secondary data, is from academic articles, policy reports, and MACC journal to build the governance framework.
The SRC International case is a significant example of the failure of leadership integrity in Malaysia. In 2020, Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak was found guilty of 7 charges, including criminal breach of trust, money laundering, and abuse of power. These often show that the principle of honesty, accountability, and integrity were not upheld. As Prime Minister, he should have been a role model who governed ethically and responsibly. The SRC International case had serious consequences. It reduced public trust in government leader and institutions were also damaging Malaysia's international reputation. This case reminds us that integrity is essential for effective leadership. Leaders must always act honestly, responsibly, and ethically because their action influence not only themselves but also the organization they lead and the country future. SRC International case highlight a serious conflict of interest because Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak held several key positions at the same time as Prime Minister, Ministry of Finance, and official of SRC International. This gave him significant influence over major financial decisions. When too much authority is concentrated in one person and institutional oversight is weak, the risk of abuse of power increase. This abuse of power in this case affected the public interest because a leader is expected to act in the best interest of the nation. Instead, the concentration of authority enabled decisions that benefit personal interest. The case also involved the approval of government guarantee for SRC international loan and lead to conviction under Section 23 of the MACC Act 2009 for abuse of public office. Overall, this case demonstrates the importance of strong governance, effective check and balance, and transparent leadership to prevent corruption and restore public confidence. The next is lesson learned. Integrity is essential for effective leadership. Abuse of power undermines democracy and public trust. Strong institution and independent court prevent corruption. The last one is governance, reform, and separation of power are necessary.
For the first time, a former prime minister was charged with corruption, found guilty by the court, and sent to prison. Because of this, the case received attention in Malaysia and around the world. The Addendum Order. In early 2024, a new issue came up. It was called the Addendum Order. People claimed that the 16 young di-Pertuan Agong had signed an extra order. This order would allow Najib to serve the rest of his prison sentence under house arrest instead of staying in a prison. The issue came bigger when Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi submitted an affidavit to the High Court. In the affidavit, Zahid said that Tengku Zafrul showed him a scanned copy of the order on a mobile phone. The document was said to have the King's signature in the Royal Coat of Arms, but the original document was never shown. Because of that, lawyers considered the affidavit to be hearsay evidence. This means it is based on what someone else said, not on the original document. The King also raised question about whether the government had fully followed the King's order. Another interesting part of these cases is the slogan, Malu Apa Bosku. The slogan became popular after the 2018 general election. At the time, Najib was already facing corruption charges. Even so, many people still came to support him. Some researchers said Najib changed his public image. Instead of looking like a powerful politician, he looked more friendly and close to ordinary people. The word Bosku came from Sabah. In Sabah, people use Bosku to mean friend or bro. The word Malu Apa means why be ashamed. The phrase became famous after a video of Najib talking with a young supporter went viral. Najib later explained that Bosku reminds him that the real boss is the Malaysian people.
One MDB case is significant because it marks a historic turning point in the history of Malaysian law and politics. Najib became the first former prime minister to be prosecuted, convicted, and jailed for the misappropriation of SRC international funds. This event shattered the long-standing perception that top leaders enjoy political or legal immunity, and reaffirmed the principle that no individual, regardless of rank or position, is above the law. The strength and independence of the judiciary were also demonstrated through consistent judgment across the High Court, Court of Appeal, and Federal Court. Bernama confirmed that Najib was the first former prime minister to be imprisoned at Kajang Prison, signaling that Malaysian history has entered a new era where top leaders are no longer immune to the law. The case also introduced the iconic term national embarrassment into Malaysia political and legal discourse. On 8 December 2021, Court of Appeal Judge Datuk Abdul Karim Abdul Jalil rejected the defense argument that Najib's actions were in the national interest. Instead, the judge stated that these actions were a failure that shamed the nation. The direct quote from the judgment was, "This is not something that can be said to have been done in national interest. Instead, it is a national embarrassment." This phrase has since become a permanent benchmark for evaluating leadership ethics, accountability, and institutional integrity in Malaysia. Finally, this case is not merely a white-collar crime trial. It reflects a complex vision of law, politics, and social communication. Controversial elements such as the Addendum Order and Ahmad Zahid Hamidi affidavit added a dimension of political mystery, raising questions about executive transparency. At the same time, the Malu Apa Bosku phenomenon show how social media narratives can influence public perception even when an individual faces legal conviction. The case is now a landmark in legal and governance discourse, blending political drama, legal controversy, and unprecedented communication strategies. Overall, it demonstrates that the SRC International scandal is an essential case study on accountability, the rule of law, and the dynamics of modern politics in Malaysia.
Next, I'll talk about the agreement on the finding and decisions of the SRC International Sendirian Berhad case. In this section, I will explain why I agree with the findings and the final decision reached by the Malaysian court. Firstly, I agree that the conviction was justified because the evidence presented throughout the trial was strong and consistent. On 23 August 2022, the Federal Court upheld Najib Razak's conviction and sentence of 12 years imprisonment and 210 million fine. Both the Court of Appeal and Federal Court conclude that the prosecution had successfully proven its case, while the defense failed to raise reasonable doubt. Therefore, the verdict upheld the principle that no one is above the law and strengthened public confidence in the independence and credibility of Malaysia's judiciary. My agreement with the court's findings is also based on the serious breach of public trust committed in this case. At the time of the offence, Najib Razak held several important positions, including Prime Minister, Minister of Defence, and Chairman of the SRC Board of Advisors. Instead of reducing his responsibility, these positions increased the seriousness of the offence because he was entrusted to protect public interests. Furthermore, the defence was unable to provide convincing explanations regarding the KWAP loan, the transfer of 42 million ringgit into his personal accounts, and the claim that the money originated from a Saudi donation. Documentary evidence demonstrated knowledge, control, and personal benefit from the funds. As a result, the court was justified in concluding that the evidence clearly linked him to the SRC transactions. Finally, I agree with the court's decision because of its importance in protecting public trust and strengthening the rule of law. Although some supporters considered the punishment too severe, public opinion generally supported equal treatment before the law. For example, a survey found that about 70% of respondents rejected the proposal for house arrest, arguing that it will create a double standard between political elites and ordinary citizens. This case also symbolized the transformation of the slogans "Malu apa bosku" into what the Court of Appeal described as national embarrassment. Therefore, the verdict served as a strong reminder that corruption must be addressed regardless of status or power. In conclusion, the punishment imposed was justified, proportionate, and necessary to uphold justice and accountability in Malaysia.
The SRC International Corruption case and former Prime Minister Najib Razak have become a benchmark in the history of the nation's legal system and integrity. This case aligned with Lord Acton's famous statement that power comes with abuse, and without control, it will be used arbitrarily. Puerto 2019 also emphasized in his writing that humans tend to become corrupt when they hold power without guidance from Sharia guidelines. From the perspective of individual thought, this case required deep evaluations and reflections. As stated in Module 6 of discourse regarding the fraud triangle theory, corruption occurs when three elements with pressure, opportunity, and rationalizations are present together. However, the SRC International case aligns more closely with the fraud diamond theory, which adds the element of capability. Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission 2020. From the perspective of individual thought, this case required deep evaluations and reflections. As stated in Module 6 of discourse regarding the fraud, this white-collar crime case not only involved the elements of opportunity, but also perpetrator who proposed a network of intelligence and strong political power in their efforts to manipulate the nation's financial system. SRC International Trial case proved that excuses tactics such as following order from superior and everyone does it are mere tactics used to serve personal interests. This white-collar crime case not only involved the elements of opportunity, but also perpetrator who proposed a network of intelligence and strong political power in their. The outcomes of this trial encourage individuals to reconsider the definitions of integrity by C.S. Lewis, which means integrity is doing the right thing even no one is watching. As a professional in the making, every individual should possess a strong moral character, so as not to repeat rationalizations excuse that normalize corruptions and ultimately lead to the destruction of the value. The outcomes of this trial encourage individuals to reconsider the definitions of integrity. According to John Hoggart, as stated in Model 6 of Discourse, the formula for corruptions is corruptions equal to power at opportunity minus integrity. This case proved the truth of this theory in life applications. Datuk Seri Najib was unable to avoid corruption when he was given the opportunity to control unlimited fund and when the value of integrity within himself enrolled. This situation served as a reminder to public servants that without proper check and balance, the power they possess, especially control over procurements and investment, will lead to corruption. According to John Hoggart, as stated in Model 6 of Discourse, the formula for corruptions is corruption. Furthermore, this case also highlights the need for an organization to practice the trust concept, as stated in Model 8 of Discourse. One of the contributing factors to the SRC International case was the failure of the top management integrity commitment, where good governance in organizational management was neglected. Wok, Mat Yusof, and Harun 2022 also stated that leakage in governance within public administrations occur due to external interference and pressure on the organization. Furthermore, this case also highlights the need for an organization to practice the However, after this trial took place, a new culture was formed in which subordinate officers must have courage to say no to governance practice that violates the law. Otherwise, the individual may be charged under Section 23 of Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commissions Act 2009, abuse of the power. Individual will no longer be protected or able to hide behind the instructions of their superior and organization. However, after this trial took place, a new culture was formed in which subordinate officers must have courage to say no to governance practice that violates the law.
The third discussion in the writing involves changes in the mindset patterns within society. According to Syed Hussein Alatas in his writing titled Sociology of Corruption, corruption occurs when society begins to normalize it. This normalization movement can be seen through the populist slogan of Najib Razak Malu Apa Bosku, which carries the meaning that the corruption he committed was supposedly for the benefit of people. In addition, the normalization of coffee money, like bribery, is an action that greatly harms society and the nation. This matter can be referred to in Module 1 of Discourse, which states that the country lost as much as 1.8 trillion ringgit Malaysia between 2005 and 2014, according to Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission 2020. Undeniably, the SRC International Corruption Scandal and 1MDB scandal cases were the main contributors to the leakage and loss of national revenue. Through this revelation, society has also begun to understand that the financial misconduct committed by these white-collar criminals has caused losses to the people themselves. With such large amount of funds, various public infrastructure development, such as schools and hospitals, could not be provided for the benefit to citizens. Through this case as well, society has become more aware of the implication of the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001. Corruption is a serious offense. An asset obtained through corruption may be seized and forfeit, as explained in Module 4 of this subject. In fact, in 2019, a total of 1.285 billion ringgit Malaysia in asset forfeits was carried out, with part of it linked to the SRC International Corruption Scandal and 1MDB scandal operations. This serves as a clear reminder to society that profits gained through criminal activities are not permanent. Moreover, corruption offenders are not limited only to those who receive bribes, but also include anyone who stores or spends the misappropriated funds. Overall, the SRC International Corruption Scandal case serves as a real-life textbook reference that validates the theories learned in the integrity and corruption course. The findings on changes in mindset based on this case teach us that corruption is not solely the responsibility of the law to address, but instead requires the practice and awareness of integrity in a holistic and inclusive manner at all levels of society. In upholding the aspiration of Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, corruption is despised, dignity is built. This case must serve as a lesson and reminder to build a corruption-free Malaysian society. If there are any questions as to whether the SRC International Corruption Scandal case and Najib Razak are capable of changing our pattern of thinking, the answer is yes. The SRC International Corruption Scandal corruption case has opened people's eyes and left a profound impact on the mindset of individuals, organizations, and society as a whole.
In conclusion, weak governance and poor checks and balance can lead into misuse of public funds. Concentration of power in one person can lead into corruption. Third is Malaysian courts only rely on documentation and testimony to prove guilt. Fourth is this study it will improve understanding on accountability and integrity. Fifth is future research should compare this study to another cases from another country to get a better understanding of it. And then the last one is SRC International case is an important reference to strengthen transparency in public institutions.